The Indiana men's basketball job it's open again, right? At the end of the season, the last couple of times it has opened up, Zionsville native and former Butler University coach and former Boston Celtics coach and now Boston Celtics executive Brad Stevens, his name keeps popping up as a candidate for the job, and he keeps saying no thanks. Of course, 2 weeks ago, Mike Woodson announced that he's not coming back next year, and Stevens was reportedly offered a 7-year, $70 million deal last time around before the Hoosiers settled in on Woodson. And with the job open again, Stevens' name keeps circulating throughout the rumor mill, and he felt it necessary this past weekend to issue a statement, a very straightforward statement saying that he is not a candidate and does not want to be a candidate for this job. He reiterated how much he enjoys his current lofty position with the Celtics, who are currently defending their NBA championship from last year. Now, Stevens garnered a lot of attention as the coach of Butler University. It's right there in the heart of Indianapolis. A lot of Indiana basketball fans noticed what he did at a small school like Butler from 2007 to 2013. Took a very small school, took them to the college basketball national championship 2 years in a row in 2010 and 2011 before moving on to the NBA to coach the Celtics, and then left the sidelines and has been in the front office ever since. Prior to that, by the way, the Indiana job never opened up. Bob Knight held that job for almost 3 decades. He won 3 national titles. And since he was fired a quarter of a century ago, the Hoosiers, they've been able to get that job right. 6 coaches have led the Hoosiers since Knight's departure. And Mike Woodson, again, won't be back next year. In addition to Woodson, who was a former Knight player, by the way, from yesteryear, you had Mike Davis, who actually took over for Knight and took those players in 2002 and got them into the national championship game, won in the semis of the Final Four and got to the Natty, lost to Maryland. And I was actually at that game in Atlanta. There was Kelvin Sampson. Dan Dockich took over on some interim basis. Tom Crean came in. Archie Miller. All of them came up short. All of them failed to live up to Knight. Knight's shadow is large in Bloomington. And then another name that keeps coming up as a possible replacement, and this was awkward on Friday. UCLA's Mick Cronin. He's on. We've talked about him here on this podcast, as a matter of fact. So UCLA comes into Bloomington at Assembly Hall to take on the Hoosiers Friday night in a nationally televised game. So obviously everybody's being asked about this, including Cronin. First of all, his Bruins came in there and they beat the Hoosiers. Some pundits are saying that was an on-the-job interview. Also awkward, it was the fact that he's a Cincinnati native, he's from the Midwest, likes to coach defense. They like that in Indiana. But all these questions about potentially coaching at Indiana next season while he's still coaching UCLA, he was pretty good at deflecting the questions and didn't just give a no comment. I thought he gave some thoughtful answers about situations. Obviously, he didn't want to talk about another coaching situation. Mike Woodson's still coaching Indiana. Cronin's still coaching UCLA. A month ago, there were a lot of message boards wanting Cronin fired at UCLA, but then they got red hot, started winning games like crazy. But he's busy coaching his own team. So he can't really say anything about this stuff. I mean, it's still February. It's not even March where the season's ending or anything like that. So anyway, I thought he did a good job answering those questions. And he might be on the list. He might be on the list that Indiana will reach out to after the season. Speaking of Bob Knight's shadow, on Saturday night, Tom Izzo, head coach of Michigan State, his Spartans beat Illinois on the road. With that win, Izzo finally passed Knight for the most Big Ten wins for a coach in Big Ten history. And, he'd been circling this mark for a while, but the Spartans, who have had a great season so far, they lost 3 out of 4. They couldn't get over the hump and get that record out of the way. I'm sure it was starting to become a little bit of a distraction. Even a game against Knight's former team, the Hoosiers, but they lost that game. And Indiana had been struggling, but the Michigan State let that game get away. But he finally got the record. So that's out of the way. He has won more Big Ten games than any coach in the history of the conference. Also in that game, did you see what happened? Michigan State at Illinois. It was on national TV on Saturday night before Izzo locked that up and got the record. At halftime, the Fighting Illini retired former player Terrence Shannon's jersey. And it was embarrassing because it was rolled up, and when they unveiled it, it was upside down. Showed it to the crowd, it's upside down. It was to the point where the school's athletic director, Josh Whitman, he jumped into the post-game press conference and spoke first and said, look, man, I'm sorry. That was regrettable. He said, while I wasn't the one that rolled up the jersey and hung it, everything that happens in this building is my responsibility. That is on me. Regrettable situation, apologetic, embarrassed about the whole thing. He did say that they were able to write it, turn it around, and that Shannon and his family and his mom were all able to take pictures with his retired jersey upside up the right way after the game, and they move on. Nothing you can do about it now. But yeah, it was an embarrassing situation. Very embarrassing. All right. Hoops, as long as we're talking about basketball. Men's basketball tonight, Monday night, nothing. Nothing on the schedule. The next men's games are Tuesday, tomorrow night. Good one. Number 7, Purdue, coming off a loss to Wisconsin. At number 11, Michigan State to take on Tom Izzo. And then Illinois. They'll be on the road to take on Wisconsin. So Minnesota is also at UCLA. That's all Tuesday night. Now the women, Monday, President's Day. We got a noon President's. I don't know what time you're checking out this podcast, but we got a game at noon Eastern here today on Monday, as Iowa is at number 9, Ohio State. 12 o'clock, nationally televised on Fox. Or hey, if you're at work, working on a President's Day, tune in a game on TV if you have a TV in the office anywhere. Michigan women will be at number 17, Maryland, 6 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network, and Northwestern is at Rutgers, 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Big Ten Network. Also, finally, our condolences to Nebraska, the Nebraska Cornhusker family, and the family of Huskers radio play-by-play announcer Greg Sharp, who passed away over the weekend. He had been battling cancer. Huskers fans know that he fought his way into the booth several times this past football season, despite his failing health, kept making the effort to make some games. And he had been the Huskers announcer since 2007. Last month, the Huskers athletic department named the radio booth of the press box at Memorial Stadium the Greg Sharp radio booth. He was 61 years old. We'll have our top 10 Big Ten observations of the weekend. That is coming up next right here on Locked On Big Ten.